Earlier this year, a fitness magazine tweeted, "It's a great day to burn off those Christmas calories." It's hard for me to think of a less controversial tweet. And yet, a psychologist led the woke mob, responding that the language was hugely concerning and problematic, because it casts exercise as a punishment and not as a normal part of everyday life. Other Twitter mobsters jumped on the bandwagon to call out the tweet. This is where we're at. There's nothing you can say that a proper social justice warrior couldn't twist to be offensive in one shape or form. A microaggression against one of many victim groups. I don't know about you, but that's made me police what I say less. If I can't win, why bother even trying? And that, in essence, is the solution, but I'll get back to that. Political correctness is nothing new, but it's clearly been escalating in the past few years. For instance, we're now supposed to believe that gender is a social construct, but you can get gender-affirming surgery by changing your sex organs. So gender doesn't correspond to sex, but by changing your sex characteristics, you can confirm that your gender corresponds to your sexual appearance. And when somebody declares themselves the opposite gender, we're expected to pretend that they changed sex. A biological impossibility, since sex is denoted by X and Y chromosomes, which at this point in scientific development cannot be changed. It's basically Orwellian doublethink, where you're supposed to wholeheartedly believe two contradictory facts at the same time. But just saying all this would make countless social justice warriors label me transphobic, as if I had some problem with the people themselves, as opposed to the psychological operation being run on the masses. Which, by the way, the victims I'm most concerned about are the young, vulnerable trans people who are being convinced to make permanent life and body-altering medical decisions, many of whom later regret it, being egged on by people who don't care the slightest about actually helping these people feel more comfortable in their own skin and only care about pushing a social agenda. That's just one example, but you certainly can't address any political issues in a rational conversation. For example, militarized police have too much power and they're not held accountable due to qualified immunity, the thin blue gang code of silence, and powerful police unions. Civil asset forfeiture is a complete violation of the Fourth Amendment. Also, Black Lives Matter, the organization, is an admittedly Marxist front with goals far beyond police accountability. Raise your fist in solidarity or you're a white supremacist, right? It's as simple as that. You're either with us or against us. One of the biggest things I value in the people around me is the ability to have a rational discussion despite disagreements, and I make sure to retain those friends and peers, even if we hold different opinions. But it seems like the general public can barely have a conversation these days. We might be able to talk about the weather without arguing. Maybe. Except that it would probably veer into a climate change debate, which, once again, cannot be addressed rationally. I care about the environment and think less pollution will obviously be a good thing. And yet, it would be insane to give government and bureaucrats the ability to destroy capitalism and enslave humanity to allegedly stop climate change. And of course, the COVID dictators delivered a master stroke in dividing society, testing mass compliance with illegal government mandates, making everybody suspicious of each other, and providing a great excuse to rat out your neighbors to the Gestapo. And also, it might make sense to protect grandma from the virus, not lock healthy people down for a year. Imagine if all the effort and resources it took to shut down society went to protecting the most vulnerable, instead of oppressing young, healthy people in an essentially 0% risk category. That would have beat the virus and solved the problem, but it wouldn't have given politicians the power they crave. To them, that would have been allowing a good crisis to go to waste. We're told to cover our faces, which is dehumanizing and makes everything more difficult. People are harder to understand, it's harder to communicate, and the depth of conversation simply breaks down. Don't talk to strangers, don't meet new people, and don't mingle. Those are all potentially infected disease carriers. Do you want to die, or worse, asymptomatically spread the virus and kill your mother? Swear off all social contact. Are you one of those people who hesitates to inject a brand new vaccine with concerning side effects and unknown long-term consequences? We'll label you an anti-vaxxer, anti-science. And no, we can't discuss this rationally. It has to be an emotionally charged condemnation of those selfish people who don't care if they murder their parents. But the real kicker in all this is how COVID lockdowns have made us compartmentalize. The politicians have tried to convince us to shun family, friends, and the support groups that we do get along with. The amount of fear being spewed by the corporate media made families fight over who was invited to the holiday parties, and who among them was the dirtiest, most likely disease carrier. Out-of-work people are dependent on government handouts, and isolated people are dependent on government support structures. And isolated targets are easier to take out. That's where conquer comes in. As a mob, burning down a police station or storming the Capitol building feels safe, strength in numbers. But the mob's not there for you when you're getting prosecuted. And that's the basic idea behind the compartmentalization of society. And they've divided people so well that one side cheers while the other side is conquered. For example, some of the same people who wanted to abolish the police last summer enthusiastically support police breaking up parties and arresting people who aren't wearing masks, all in the name of COVID. The big tech companies also moved to conquer this year. They apparently started to believe the propaganda that they're monopolies. So they arrogantly moved to conquer all the people who haven't adopted the correct opinions yet. First, it was the Trump supporters, Parler, and the Facebook and Twitter purges. And the left suddenly believed that private businesses have the right to refuse service. Then the tech companies came for the Wall Street bets crowd when they started to buy GameStop stock and threatened to make the hedge funds lose money. Retail investors were shut down by Reddit, purged from Discord, and prevented from buying certain stocks on Robinhood. But these tech companies moved too big too early, and their attempt to conquer will have the opposite effect. It decentralized their targets and scattered them across alternative social media and messaging apps. In many cases, apps that use encryption and don't harvest user data, at least to the same extent. The big tech companies gave people a great reason not to trust them and hastened the need for alternatives. They pushed people to their competitors. I personally stopped using Google Docs and started posting all my videos on BitChute, Rumble, and Odyssey. And when it comes to the stock market, this is just a jolt for cryptocurrencies hosted on a decentralized blockchain, not so easily shut down by NASDAQ, E-Trade, and Robinhood. The tokenization of shares on the stock market might not be that far off. Of course, they'll continue to try to conquer, but you can take your power back by adopting alternatives to the big tech companies. And it might sound counterintuitive that spreading across apps and platforms could help avoid being conquered. After all, isn't that a tactic of division? But think of it instead as guerrilla warfare. It's easy to conquer a group who all use Facebook, or all use the US dollar, or all vote Republican. But how do you conquer when the enemy is everywhere and nowhere, all at once? Shut down a single app or platform and another springs up. Crash a cryptocurrency through market manipulation and there's always another one waiting to take its place. You can't harvest the data from the encrypted communications, and you can't simply shut down somebody's bank account or credit cards if they're using a privacy coin. Therefore, one solution is to become a leader in one of these decentralized nodes of opposition power to the establishment elites. You can build and maintain support networks of like-minded people. Like-minded in whatever way that means to you, because we are not all after the same thing. Give people a rallying point or a gathering place for whatever your particular cause or interest is. Keep the social interaction going. Meet new people. Start clubs. All the better if they teach and trade important skills. Organize a group to drill together. Create a skill exchange where one person teaches pickling and another foraging, or one teaches marketing and another bookkeeping. Set up trade networks at a local level, or even an emergency response network as a safety net. Now, I realize many of you may feel like you don't have enough like-minded people around you, so mix technological outreach with in-person contact. It may be hard work, but I bet you could build a group almost anywhere. I've always been more interested in curating the type of people that I spend time with. And this gets me back to my stop caring comment at the beginning of the video about the elite's social justice warrior woke mob tactics to divide us. I care less and less about watching what I say, because by speaking my mind and telling the truth, like attracts like. I'm naturally calling together a group of people who have things in common, who get along, who are on the same page. That's a great reason to subscribe here, and at least on one other platform, just in case YouTube nukes me, and join my email list, link in the description. So, if you hate the direction that cancel culture is going, the best thing you can do is just ignore it entirely. This will naturally repulse the social justice warriors and attract people who think you're brave for speaking basic truths that have somehow become taboo. I'm going to articulate this idea better in an upcoming video about self-selecting your friends, lovers, and audience. So make sure you subscribe. I'm Joe Jarvis. Thanks for watching. Come back and see me again soon.